Well, good evening. We are back again, the dynamic duo talking about storms and potential for chasing here in Virginia. I'm Chris White, here in Roanoke, storm chaser for WDBJ7 television. And then you can see Andrew's got his lower third there. I decided not to put my lower third on this time because last broadcast I had it on and it really messed up my video. I couldn't see either one of the other videos, people's videos, and it was messing me up. So I'm going without it this time. So we'll let Chris. We'll let Andrew carry the banner for us here. Aubrey Urbanowitz is going to join us in a few minutes. She had some TV studio work. She's actually working tonight, so she had some work to get done in the studio. She'll be joining us as soon as she possibly can. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and start us out with some looks at what we might be facing here in the near future for our lookouts here. So let me do a screen share, and we will look at here we go, the WPC site. Let me click on there. Too many things at one time. So this is the forecast surface map. This is for this evening at 8 o'clock, like right now, is their forecast. And we kind of roll it forward 6 hours at a time. And you can see we're going to be pretty well wedged in here with this front dipping down across into the Carolinas, and we're in between the two lows. But then as this upper low over here, and we'll talk about that in just a second, an upper low and a surface reflection there over the Ohio Valley starts driving this other front north. We get to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, which is tomorrow evening, and you see they kind of have the warm front / wedge front along the North Carolina-Virginia border. That presents some interesting possibilities for chasing along that area. In my part of the state, it would be the US 58 corridor, but down in there. So we'll look at some of that, and then it moves it on north for Thursday, which opens up some other possibilities for the northern and western parts of the state. Now, if I click over here, this is the GFS model. This is the 18Z run at the 500 millibar level. And the reason I pulled this up, this is tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, 18Z. And you can see here over the Midwestern states, there's an upper level low. And if I bring this forward at least a couple of steps, this is 21Z, and this is 0Z. You can see it starts deepening a bit. And if I come on forward through Thursday, into the mid-afternoon Thursday, you can see this upper level low is starting to take a negative tilt. In other words, the trough it's associated with is actually tilting on the north, is tilting back toward the northwest. And then if I move it on ahead, it becomes very negative. That's a very good setup for severe weather. And as you see there, a lot of this vorticity, a lot of the call it the spin in the upper atmosphere, for lack of a better term, is over the eastern part of the state. So that may put the onus on Andrew to cover that part of the state for us in the chasing area. So let me do a stop screen share here, and I will toss it back to Andrew and let him talk for a bit.
Yeah, but you kind of touched on some of the things I've been seeing. The WPC seems to be a little quick in moving the front end. It seems like you were showing 12Z having the front already, along the 95 corridor, and the models, at least this evening on the 18Z run, have been a lot slower with it, keeping it almost as far back as the 29 corridor, at least into early afternoon. So that's a positive for around here, keeping the instability in the warm front further west, and the cold front as well. It would play better into having a Thursday afternoon chase here. I've been a little worried that it may push through a little sooner, but it seems like it's been slowing it down a little bit. So
gotcha.
Wednesday here, at least in Richmond, I think is a wash. But Thursday is what I'm keeping my eye on right now.
Okay. And I should welcome Aubrey, and she had a chance to tune in for us.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Aubrey.
We still haven't done promos yet, so I will have to step away in a moment. But since they're late doing them, I thought, well, I might as well hop on.
Well, cool. It's good to have you. And for those of you who don't know, Aubrey is the chief meteorologist at WHSV TV3 in Harrisonburg, and she's also one of these stellar panelists on the Weather Brains crew.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate you joining us. So, for what you've seen so far, I just kind of gave a big overview talking about the big picture and the upper levels, and you heard what Andrea was saying. What have you seen for the next couple of days?
Yeah, originally I was growing quite concerned with Thursday morning, but as we all know, the wedge is very slow to erode here, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. So I think I kind of caught the tail end, but Andrew, I think you're right. Kind of more of a Thursday afternoon deal is the timing wise more likely. It seems there's substantial shear in place at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, looking at like the temperature and dew point, at least in the afternoon, it does seem like at least further west towards the mountains into the valley, it's struggling to break the wedge. It's right on that 29 corridor is where that wants to set up. So, it's so tricky how these models handle the wedge. Half the time they get them right, half the time they don't. So that's going to be the key to keep an eye on Thursday is where exactly that boundary is going to set up, because where that boundary sets up, that can also spin up your little extra shear in the atmosphere, right. And any storm that can feed off that could spin up a brief tornado.
And the 3 kilometer NAM, I call it Nesty. The 3 kilometer NAM actually has been doing a very good job, because I think a lot of the models were kind of misconstrued yesterday. There was a lot of extra stuff in there that didn't happen. So as I was looking at run to run and comparing initializations and stuff, the 3 kilometer NAM just seemed to do a better job at handling the longer wedge and not eroding it so quickly.
Right. And in what we were just looking at on the upper levels, the upper level low over the Ohio Valley, later on Thursday takes a negative tilt, which kind of kicks things into gear. So let me screen share this really quick, and here we go. This is the Nesty, if you will.
I like Nesty. It's kind of like Nessie, like Loch Ness, but
there you go.
Nesty.
Exactly. This is the most unstable cape and basically the deep shear. And if you look at it, if we started out here at 12Z on Thursday at 8 a.m. and run it forward, you can see all of a sudden the cape, the most unstable cape, starts really lifting. Basically, it looks like along the I-64 corridor there.
I think it's gonna happen fast. Kind of what I'm looking at is after afternoon time, we're gonna get a huge punch,
right?
And then they start going.
And the thing that interests me, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the shear vectors, so they're basically south to north, but they're whistling along at 50 to 60 knots, and that's a lot of shear for this time of year.
Absolutely. And I was I didn't look at it today, but I was looking at the jet circulation. Where am I at? Was it on Pivotal? There's so many, I think I get them all mixed up. But anyways, I think it was on Pivotal. But I was looking at the jet, and it seemed to be kind of right over, where was it? The jet seemed pretty strong over the area too, as well as the upper low.
Right. Yeah, the idea of that shear. I've looked at a couple of soundings, and we can pull some up here in a little bit. But a couple of the soundings, I think it was the earlier GFS today was showing like a high shear, low cape setup. But then as the days progress, the cape values have come up as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too with looking at our soundings here, which are somewhat interpolated, but it did look to be a very high shear, low cape, and then all of a sudden the cape seemed to be growing throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, I think this morning the models barely had 1,000, maybe 1,250 cape into the area. Now we're pushing 2,000, so it's definitely trending towards significantly more energy in the atmosphere to work with.
I gotta go do promos. I'll be right back.
Okay, Albert. Yeah, let me, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at some of the SPC stuff. And of course, for tomorrow, the SPC has a little bit of marginal risks, again, along the lines of when that wedge boundary might retreat. And I don't believe on day 3 on Thursday there's anything, but I'd be willing to bet that when the day 2s come out tomorrow, that there's going to be at least a marginal, and it may wind up being a slight risk on Thursday when the day 1s come out. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think at the minimum we'll for sure see a marginal risk pop up. I think the slate is going to have to depend on just how some of the parameters come together, because I just pulled up a sounding. And let me do a screen share real quick. This is the Nesty sounding, probably around Petersburg, maybe between Petersburg and Emporia region. Like you said, I mean, the wind barbs in the upper atmosphere, you're screaming 70 knots, even 100 knots here. So winds are going to be blowing, but it's very unidirectional. But you also have a little kink kind of in the middle of the atmosphere. So it's kind of weird how, you know, at the surface, you're blowing from the south, and you go up and you kind of kink from the southwest, then you go back to the north. So I think that may cause a little bit of struggle for some of the storms to organize a little better. It's not going to be unidirectional, but at the same time, it's not, you know, rotating with height like you'd normally like to see. But
Right.
I think if some of this stuff kind of gets its act together, especially if you start getting some southeasterly winds at the surface, you might see an even more increase of severe potential.
Right. Right. And by the way, Andrew, I'm having that same problem we had last time we did with the lower thirds. I can't see your video again.
Okay. Let me try turning mine off, see if that just makes a difference for you.
I think it's just my computer. It just doesn't like that particular application. It is not a Google app. It's a third-party app, so maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
But well, while you're doing that, I've got a screen share here I can bring up.
All right, go right ahead. I'm done with mine here.
Okay, this is. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is the sounding at Danville tomorrow, talking about Wednesday at 22Z, which is 6 o'clock, and you can tell. I mean, look at the wind profile.
That's what you love to see for tornadic activity.
Yeah, and you look at this big, you know, tornado signature over here in the weather type. But this is the 18Z Nesty, if you will, and it's showing. And if you look at the surface ops, which I did earlier, it's showing that that warm front, wedge front, is going to be just above the border, you know, running along again that US 58 corridor from Martinsville to South Boston. And if that holds true, and this wind profile shows up, there's plenty of cape in here, and plenty. I mean, look at the storm relative velocities are over 400.
400 0 to 1. That's insane.
That's insane. So you can, you know, unless things change, you can guess where I'm going to be tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Tomorrow was going to be a play on the warm front somewhere down there in that North Carolina, Virginia border, Danville, South Boston, Martinsville, somewhere in that area. I know it's not the greatest terrain, especially once you get down to the Roxborough area. I know you've had some issues chasing down there in the past, but if you can find something that's going to anchor on that warm front, that could be a show.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, the issue down there is like you said, is you have to. It's a narrow corridor there where you have open farmland, and then you get down into that first rural counties in North Carolina, and it gets really tough with a lot of the trees and lack of roads. But get on a good storm, and it's worth chasing. I mean, it's worth keeping on, as you know, from some of the parts in southeast Virginia there.
Yeah. I had something. I don't know if I still have it up here. I think I had the Helicity up for tomorrow afternoon, and I mean, just kind of showed what that sounding was showing across Southern Virginia. I mean, it was just a blanket of strong Helicity all across the state, really. I'll screen share it out. Can you still not see what's going on here? Am I still a black box for you?
You're still a black box for me.
Okay, well, I'll share this for the others to see here. This is the 0 to 3 Helicity at 0Z tomorrow, and it's just, I mean, we've got values pushing 500, 600, 700 right along with that warm front's going to be draped there in Southern Virginia. So if any kind of storm can tap into that if that sucker's not spinning and putting down some kind of weak tornado, it's missing a blown opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the setup that I was looking at. And again, by the time tomorrow rolls around, I won't be watching the models. I'll be watching the surface observations to find out what's going on and doing that. But if you can get, you know, the warm front can lift far enough north that you can get a little bit of clearing behind it. The other problem is, as you know, Andrew, we've done enough chasing around warm fronts together. It can be a grunge fest. You just can't. The visibility is terrible. Obviously, the ceilings are low because that's kind of what goes hand in hand with high dew points. But if you get a little bit of clearing, a little bit of sunshine, and couple that with a good road network, there might be some good stuff to chase down that way.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess the only problem with this kind of setup is you're dealing with a socked in wedge as opposed to a semi clearing out wedge behind that warm front. And that just, like you've experienced many times down there, that just leads to grungy storms with, very difficult, very little structure and hard to see conditions.
Right. Aubrey, we're still trying to get you out to go chasing with me at some point on a weekend, but
I know it's really has to be the right weekend when I'm not doing anything, because I'm usually pretty booked on the weekends, and when there's actually activity, and as long as we have enough staffing here, when I wouldn't be called into work. So it would have to be out of my area, but yeah, so we're working on it.
yeah, unfortunately, we can't get the weather to cooperate. But I figure since you were the chief meteorologist, you could make something happen, right?
I have put in the order, but Mother Nature has not gotten back to me on that yet. So, but yeah, honestly, if Thursday afternoon was happening on, Saturday afternoon, I'd be more than happy to drive all over the state.
Yeah, and we'll work on that, and because I can certainly come up that way, because some of the places I go in Southern Virginia is just as, to go to Harrisonburg or the I-64 corridor is just as close to me as it is the other places. So
yeah, and you've got some, semi-wider open spaces, obviously a lot of hills in Nelson County and stuff, but then we're starting to get into kind of the farmland and a little bit more of the battlefield land, which is a little flatter. But yeah, I've never chased, and I've never seen a tornado. I thought I saw a funnel once, but I'm still not sure. I was kind of an intern, so I was really, really new. But I grew up in Connecticut, and then I lived in Eastern Tennessee, and we just didn't have it at the time I was there.
We'll have to fix that, because that
Yeah.
that whole area east of the Blue Ridge is my old chase territory when I lived in Northern Virginia. So I've got a whole bunch of spots and vantage points over there I already have kind of mapped out in my head. So we'll have to do that.
It was really interesting. I went to Kansas last year for a wedding, and we ended up driving to Oklahoma City, and I saw one storm in the distance while we were driving, and it wasn't a severe storm. I checked. It wasn't a severe storm, but just actually seeing the structure, that's Greg Master behind me, but actually seeing the structure of this, even, maybe almost a supercell, but not quite severe yet, was just incredible, because I never get to see the bottom of a storm.
Mm-hmm. That's the greatest thing about chasing out there, is just that visibility. And you get storms that look like that around here, but you can't see it through the trees. And you have that, miles and miles of uninterrupted horizon. It's a sight to see for sure.
Yeah.
And it is. And you guys can talk among yourselves. I'm going to look up a storm here. I think if I remember from chasing out west which one I'm talking about, but it has to do with structure more than anything else. Some of the structure is more important or more impressive than some of the tornadoes we've seen, right, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. I'll take a structure storm over a tornado. The picture of the storm that came out of Middleburg up in Northern Virginia, what was it? I guess Friday night or sometime over the weekend. That was on the high risk day out in the plains, and that structure was just as good, if not better, than anything pictures I actually saw coming in from the plains. So, and I'll take that any day. Anytime you get some good striations, some pancake stacks up there, that to me is really worth it.
Yeah, I was going to see if I could find this one particular thing that is actually was the day before the El Reno tornado, because we were out there with the Hokie Storm Chasers back in 2013 for both the Norman, the May 20th EF4, EF5, and also the El Reno tornado. And other than those particular tornadoes, this particular structure that I found as soon as I paged through to find it was the most impressive thing we saw out there. And it didn't involve a tornado at all.
Right.
Andrew, what are your thoughts on some organized, really good structures on Thursday afternoon with some of the shear that should be in place?
We were just talking about that while you were away doing the promos. If there was a little more spinning with the height, with the wind profiles, we had some of the soundings up. Winds are a little unidirectional right now. There's a little twist when you get just off the surface from the southwest, but then it goes back. It's almost a due south wind profile. If that can kink a little bit at the surface and get a little southeasterly twist in there, we might be able to get a little structure. But I'm also a little concerned with the speeds that these storms are going to be racing along and difficult to keep up with.
This is a sounding from the Shenandoah Valley, and you can pretty much see exactly what you're talking about. We've got more of the speed shear, but not so much as the directional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So, that if you can get a kink, if that front retreats and you can get a kink along the front, that'll help throw a twist in there like Andrew was talking about.
Yeah, I think you're going to be dealing. It looks like, based on some of the forecast reflectivities I've seen, it may be kind of a linear situation setting up, but it could be a broken linear situation. Catching a couple tail cell Charlies out there, probably be some decent shelf clouds, I would certainly imagine.
Right.
Don't know if we'll get what Chris just pulled up there, but that'd be nice.
This was the structure I was talking about. We saw in that one storm. This was west, or I'm sorry, east of Interstate 35. This is the day before the El Reno tornado, so this would have been May 30th. And this was just a stacked plate mesocyclone. You can see the rotation there with the precipitation shaft off to the north. This is looking west. So that's the kind of thing you can see out there. And I could have watched that all day long and not cared if I saw a tornado.
Spectacular.
So now, one of the things that we had talked about a little bit, I guess before we went on the air, was we probably not going to have a chance to schedule another hangout before the weekend, but there does look like there could be some action over the weekend as well, for probably Saturday and Sunday. Here's real quick what I took. What do you guys have seen?
At least for our area in the valley, Saturday was looking a little bit more active than Sunday is right now, but I think we've definitely got some potential for some, even severe storms to really roll through the area on Saturday. But the one thing is, and I think this was Saturday. Let me pull up the sounding. It looked like there was going to be quite a large. The lift index looked pretty high, which was kind of surprising, I thought, for Saturday.
Let's see here.
Yeah, we've got some more unidirectional shear, but should be maybe a high cape.
Yeah, Saturday lifted indices are anywhere from -8 to -10.
Yeah,
especially over to this part of the state.
I'm looking at -6 here, and some pretty high cape over 2,000 joules. So.
And Kentucky's pushing 10 to 14 west of us here.
Wow.
Right. Let me throw this up. This is the GFS for Saturday. This is the EHI, the combined Cape and helicity hit. This is for Saturday afternoon, and it's pretty robust. And I think it's fairly similar. If I run this forward, let's see. Okay, there's 0Z Saturday, or actually 8 o'clock Saturday, and then run it forward to Sunday, and it looks pretty robust as well. So there's going to be plenty of moisture involved, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that pattern flip from super dry now to continuous moisture.
Yeah, moisture's not a problem this year.
No, I mean, you knew it was going to happen, when it's been so dry for so long, and we're just going to get that pattern flip here.
And it's going to be a shock to a lot of people's systems. I don't know about Richmond and Harrisonburg, but I was looking at the stats for Roanoke today, and we hit a grand high of 62 degrees today.
We were 63.
Okay. So when it gets back up in where it should be, which by the end of May in this area should be in the 80s, low 80s, it's going to be a shock to most people's systems.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been nice.
I'm trying to pull up I got a weather station in my backyard, and it hit a high of 65 today. So
yeah,
got y'all beat by a little bit, but that's not anything to brag about.
Yeah,
I'm actually thinking of dropping my high for tomorrow with this, with the wedginess. I make up words. I'm sorry.
Coining words is fine. We don't have any problems with the English language in this country. So
I made up when you have a sunset, but you have the sun kind of below the clouds. I call that horizontal clearing.
Right, that works for me. I like
it. Feel free to use.
Hey, chasers have their own slang, so TV Mets can have whatever they want, right?
Where are we?
Yeah, it's looking like for the weekend, at least via the GFS, Saturday has more potential. It looks like the further east you go, there's going to be probably some sea breeze front setting up just inland of the Chesapeake Bay, because there's a very sharp cutoff in the instability and a very sharp rise in the capping, a very stark capping as well. So that'll be, at least for me, something to keep an eye on. If stuff were to fire, you know, there's potential it's going to hit a brick wall somewhere east of Richmond and just completely fizzle out. But before it gets there, it would have certainly enough energy to deal with. But I've run into that issue here a couple times in the last couple of years, where storms start making their way towards the bay, and there's just kind of a unseen cool, or unseen cap from the bay's stabilizing powers that these storms run into and just completely die. So that's a little frustrating when you spend so much time trying to get to a storm and it dies on you right when you get to it.
Right.
Yeah. Used to have that happen a lot in chasing in Fredericksburg. We call it the I-95 wall,
That's pretty much what this looks like, yeah.
So yeah, that would be an interesting study if we could get some funds to do that, to look at the vertical profile of those bay and sea breeze fronts and see, because I would be willing to bet that they're not totally vertical. It may lean over a bit and kill the storms at the upper levels first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. That would be a good one for the tech meteorologist to look up, since that's right in their backyard.
There you go. There you go.
Relatively in their backyard.
Is there anything else we want to chat about for the next couple of days, or even mention about the weekend, since it's coming up? There's running up on about half an hour here, but I don't want to leave anything on stone unturned.
Well, I don't know about you guys down in Roanoke, but it looks like we're going to get some pretty heavy rain and storms tomorrow night. And I think part of your area, Roanoke, would be in this, but the marginal risk for some excessive rainfall.
I expect so, because everything around here, I'm sure it is up your way, is saturated, and the whole flash flood potential is there.
Well, you guys are more saturated than us. We've kind of had some slow saturation, so our soil is probably not as saturated as yours, but definitely coming down. Picking up another 1.5 inches Wednesday night, especially with some storms.
Right, and that's one thing that I have to keep in mind. And like I will plan to go chasing tomorrow down that way and along the Route 58 corridor, but there's a lot of flooding. The Dan River is in flood stage now, and because you got to be careful about stream and road flooding too. So something else I'll be keeping an eye on, to make sure I don't get stuck in something. But the worst thing you can do, as Andrew knows, is get stuck on a chase with a severe storm bearing down on you and you can't get out of the way.
Chris, do you always have a partner when you go storm chasing?
Not always. I have I call him an apprentice. He's a retired law enforcement officer down here who's also a pilot, very, very interested in weather, but he can't always go because of other schedules. But when he goes, he drives, which frees me up to do everything else. But when I go by myself, then it's, I only have 2 hands and 2 feet and 2 eyes. There's only so much I can do.
Well, plus you don't want to put yourself in something you can't get out of.
Oh, exactly. That's one of the first rules of chasing is you get on the storm, you better have at least one, if not more, egress routes to get out of the way.
Which around here is sometimes difficult to have, because you get on a road that goes away and next thing you know, it loops right back to the storm. So you got to really be aware of not only your escape route, but the escape route from the escape route.
Yeah, and in your case, Andrew, you're over there where the rivers widen out, so the bridges are really a limit for you.
Yeah, there's only, set 3 or 4 crossings for each river in total, really, between the peninsula here with 64 and heading north. So it cuts off a lot of chases, because sometimes, to reposition on a storm that's going up if you can't get a storm along 360, you have to dive down to West Point and start heading up that way. And that takes you so far out of position that it's very difficult to make up ground on those unless they're moving really slow.
Right. And they haven't been moving particularly slow this year.
Yeah, usually once summer gets in full swing, once July gets here, they start slowing down, and then you can actually kind of make some plays on storms by repositioning. But for the time being here in the spring, it's kind of make a stab at it and then you're done. Right. At least for me.
Right. So Aubrey, we'll get you out on the chase here. We just got to arrange the right weather and time and schedule together. So.
Yep. And for your luck, I'm actually very good with maps also.
This is good. Navigation is a very important part of this. Yep.
I'm very good with maps, even the old-fashioned maps.
Hey, that's what we ask Andrew why I always brought on Hokie storm chases.
Always had the
atlas.
The warm atlas. Yep.
Yep.
I had
I
a
navigated my way through the East Coast with that when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I wound up with a whole stack of, about 8 or 10 different DeLorme maps for every
Mhm.
state we would go through out there. So, all right, well, we've kind of rattled on a while. Aubrey, I'd like to really thank you for coming on, and
No,
it's
thanks for having me.
been a pleasure. And we'll do this again, especially when there's storms that are going to be threatening your particular neck of the woods, so we can talk about it.
It's been a while, so since we've had something pretty active, so we
Yeah.
shall see.
Once summer gets here, that northwest flow pattern starts kicking in. That's when we can start giving the whole state its share of severe weather, more than likely.
Right, and hopefully get out of the wedginess, right?
Yeah.
No, anytime soon. It comes soon enough.
All right, well, thanks to both of you, and thanks to everybody that's paying attention here online, and those that will watch it later, and we will see you later. Have a good one.
Have a good evening, all.
Have a good night.